Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're exploring what if Issei was saved by Ophis instead of Rias. This concept is absolutely broken because we're talking about the infinite dragon god personally investing in the red dragon emperor. Ophis can rewrite reality, casually erases other dragon gods, and has literally infinite power. Now imagine all that focused on enhancing one human, not through devil reincarnation, but direct power sharing from the most overpowered being in existence. So we thought, what if this cosmic-level entity falls in love with a human? This story follows Issei getting enhanced by infinite power, becoming the center of supernatural politics, and teaching a dragon god how to love. Reality-bending romance that literally reshapes the multiverse. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let's dive into this masterpiece. The dimensional disturbance that announced Great Red's arrival was unlike anything Issei had ever experienced. Reality didn't just tremble, it folded, twisted, and rewrote itself around the emergence of the true dragon. The sky above Kyoto town turned crimson, clouds reshaping themselves into draconic forms that roared with voices of thunder. Issei stood on the school rooftop beside Ophis, their bond humming with shared tension as they watched the most powerful being in their universe materialize from a rift in spacetime itself. Great Red's form defied conventional description, simultaneously massive enough to dwarf mountains and compact enough to focus his overwhelming presence into a single devastating point. "Why is he here?" Issei asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "To judge what we have become," Ophis replied, her voice carrying undertones of uncertainty that he'd never heard before. Great Red has always been concerned about developments that might disrupt the fundamental order of existence. "Partner, this is beyond anything we've faced before," DxD warned, his voice tight with ancient recognition. Great Red isn't just the most powerful dragon, he's one of the foundational forces that maintains reality itself. If he views your bond as a threat to cosmic stability, the true dragon's attention settled on them with the weight of collapsing stars. When he spoke, his voice resonated through dimensions that Issei didn't even know existed. "Ophis, you have allowed mortal emotions to corrupt your infinite nature." "I have allowed mortal emotions to complete my infinite nature," Ophis corrected, stepping forward with characteristic fearlessness despite the overwhelming power focused on them. "There is a difference. Is there? Observe the consequences of your evolution." Great Red gestured with one massive claw, and suddenly Issei could see what the true dragon was referring to. Across multiple dimensions, the fabric of reality showed stress fractures, places where the impossible combination of infinite and finite energy was creating instabilities in the cosmic order. "Our bond is affecting the multiverse itself," Issei breathed, horror creeping into his voice as he recognized the scope of what they had unknowingly caused. "Precisely. Your emotional attachment has created resonance patterns that threaten the stability of existence itself. This cannot be permitted to continue." Ophis's power flared defensively, but even her infinite energy seemed diminished compared to Great Red's overwhelming presence. "The instabilities are temporary. As our bond stabilizes, the dimensional fluctuations will settle into new equilibrium states. And if they do not, if your experiment in combining finite and infinite consciousness tears apart the foundations of reality, will your love be worth the destruction of countless universes?" The question hit like a physical blow. Through their bond, Issei felt Ophis's internal struggle, her love for him warring against her responsibility as a cosmic force. For the first time since they had met, she seemed genuinely uncertain about the path they had chosen. "There has to be another way," Issei said, stepping between Ophis and Great Red despite the suicidal nature of the gesture. "If our bond is causing problems, then let us help fix them. Don't just demand we give up everything we've found together." "You would risk universal annihilation for your personal happiness?" "I would risk anything to protect what we have," Issei replied honestly. "But I wouldn't sacrifice innocent lives for it. If there's a way to stabilize the dimensional fluctuations while preserving our bond, we'll find it." Great Red's massive head tilted, and for a moment his overwhelming hostility seemed to give way to something approaching curiosity. "Such certainty from one so small. Tell me, mortal, what makes you believe you can solve problems that challenge cosmic forces?" Because I have something you don't, Issei said, reaching out to take Ophis' hand. The moment their fingers touched, their bond flared to life, infinite and finite power interweaving in patterns that made reality itself sing with harmonic resonance. I have her, and she has me. Together, we're not just the sum of our individual capabilities, we're something entirely new, something that can find solutions neither of us could reach alone. Demonstrate this claim. The challenge carried the weight of ultimate authority. Great Red wasn't just asking for a display of power. He was demanding proof that their bond could solve the very problems it had created. Ophis looked at Issei questioningly, and through their connection he felt her trust in his judgment. Whatever he had in mind, whatever impossible solution he was reaching for, she would support him completely. Show me the dimensional fractures, Issei said, his enhanced awareness already expanding beyond normal human perception. Let me see exactly what our bond is doing to reality. Great Red gestured again, and suddenly Issei's consciousness was thrust into a state of cosmic awareness that should have destroyed his mortal mind instantly. Only his bond with Ophis allowed him to survive the experience, her infinite nature providing the stability needed to process information on a universal scale. He could see it all, the stress patterns their love had created, the way their combined energy signature was creating resonance cascades across multiple dimensions. But more than that, he could see the underlying structure that held it all together, the fundamental forces that maintained cosmic stability. And in that moment of expanded awareness, he understood what needed to be done. The problem isn't our bond itself, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated across dimensions. It's that our bond exists in isolation. We're creating instabilities because we're the only example of finite infinite symbiosis. But if there were others, a network of balanced partnerships. Finite beings bonded with infinite or near-infinite entities, all connected through harmonic resonance patterns that would distribute the dimensional stress instead of concentrating it in a single point. Through their bond, Issei felt Ophis' growing understanding and excitement. She could see the solution he was proposing, the elegant way it would transform their unique connection from a cosmic anomaly into the foundation of a new form of universal stability. The Dragon Emperors, she said, her voice carrying notes of revelation. White and red, finite hosts carrying infinite draconic power, they already represent a form of finite infinite partnership. And devils with their contracted humans, angels with their faithful, even fallen angels with their chosen partners. Issei continued, the pieces falling into place with crystalline clarity. The framework already exists, we just need to help it evolve. You propose to transform the fundamental nature of supernatural relationships throughout existence. I propose to help them reach their full potential, Issei corrected. The connections already exist, we just need to show them how to deepen those bonds in ways that create stability instead of chaos. Great Red was silent for a long moment, his massive form motionless as he processed the implications of their proposal. When he finally spoke, his voice carried notes of grudging respect. An ambitious solution, perhaps too ambitious for mere mortals to execute. Then it's a good thing I'm not mere anything anymore, Issei replied with a confidence that surprised even himself. And neither is she, we're partners in something that's never existed before. If anyone can make this work, it's us. The true dragon's attention shifted to Ophis, and when he spoke, his tone held a warning that made reality itself tremble. If you attempt this transformation and fail, the consequences will be beyond catastrophic. Are you prepared to accept that responsibility? Ophis straightened, her infinite power flowing around her in patterns that spoke of absolute determination. I accept responsibility for what we have begun and for what we will accomplish together. Our love will not be the destroyer of universes, it will be their salvation. And you, mortal, are you prepared to become a force of cosmic change? Issei looked at Ophis, seeing his own determination reflected in her ancient eyes. Through their bond, he felt the vast scope of what they were proposing to undertake, nothing less than the evolution of love itself across all of existence. I'm prepared to become whatever I need to be, he said firmly. For her, for us, and for everyone who deserves the chance to love without fear. Great Red studied them both for what felt like an eternity before something that might have been approval flickered across his cosmic features. Very well, you will have your chance to prove your theory, but know this, I will be watching. At the first sign that your experiment threatens universal stability, I will end it. Permanently? Understood, Ophis replied, though her tone suggested she had no intention of failing. One final warning, Ophis, love has made you vulnerable in ways you have never experienced. Your enemies will exploit this weakness without hesitation. Guard your heart carefully, lest it become the weapon used to destroy everything you seek to protect. With that ominous pronouncement, Great Red began to fade, his overwhelming presence gradually withdrawing from their dimension. But his final words echoed in the space he left behind, a reminder that their greatest strength could also become their most dangerous vulnerability. As the crimson sky returned to normal and the weight of cosmic attention lifted from their shoulders, Issei found himself alone with Ophis on the rooftop, both of them trembling from the magnitude of what they had just committed to undertake. "We just promised to revolutionize love across the multiverse," he said, his voice carrying notes of awe and terror in equal measure. "We promised to fulfill the potential that our bond represents," Ophis corrected, moving closer until they were touching, their connection providing comfort and strength. "To show other beings what becomes possible when finite and infinite choose to grow together. Partner, do you have any idea how to actually accomplish what you just promised?" "Not yet," Issei admitted, "but we'll figure it out." Together, as they stood on the rooftop watching the sun set over Kyoto town, both of them could feel the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on their shoulders. They had transcended the simple categories of human and dragon god, becoming something new that carried the hopes and fears of entire universes. But they had also proven that their love was strong enough to face even the ultimate authority and emerge victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever impossible tasks they had accepted, they would meet them as partners who had chosen each other across every barrier that existence could place between them. The true dragon's challenge had been survived. Now came the even greater challenge of living up to the promises they had made. But as their hands found each other and their bond pulsed with shared determination, Issei knew they were ready for whatever came next. After all, they had already achieved the impossible simply by loving each other. Everything else was just a matter of scale. The interdimensional conference chamber Ophis had created for their first Universal Love Symposium was perhaps the most bizarre meeting space Issei had ever experienced. Representatives from dozens of different supernatural factions, pantheons, and cosmic entities sat around a crystalline table that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, each participant appearing in whatever form best suited their nature. "I still can't believe we convinced them to attend," Issei murmured to Ophis as they reviewed their presentation materials one final time. "Curiosity is a powerful motivator," she replied, her dark eyes scanning the assembled beings with careful attention. "When the infinite dragon god and her finite partner announce they have a solution to universal instability, few dare ignore the invitation." 2 weeks had passed since Great Red's ultimatum, and they had spent every moment preparing for this unprecedented gathering. The theory was sound: create a network of balanced, finite, infinite partnerships that would distribute dimensional stress rather than concentrate it. But theory and practice were two very different things. "Partner, I'm detecting some very hostile energy signatures among our guests," DxD warned. "Not everyone here is interested in peaceful solutions to cosmic problems." As if to confirm the dragon's observation, a section of the conference table suddenly erupted in shadows that coalesced into familiar figures. Rizvim Livan Lucifer materialized along with several other beings whose power signatures made Issei's enhanced senses scream warnings. "How thoughtful of you to gather so many important targets in one location," Rizvim said with predatory satisfaction. "It will make our demonstration far more efficient." Ophis was on her feet instantly, infinite power cascading around her in protective waves. "You were not invited to this gathering. Invitations are for those who respect boundaries," replied a new voice from the shadows. A figure stepped forward that made even Rizvim seem diminished by comparison, tall, imposing, with eyes that held the darkness between stars. "I am Abyss, and I represent forces that predate your precious cosmic order. Ancient chaos entity," DxD identified grimly. "Old enough to remember when reality was far more flexible in its rules. "What do you want?" Issei demanded, though he was already reaching for his connection to both DxD and Ophis, preparing for combat on a scale that might shatter dimensions. "To demonstrate the fundamental flaw in your adorable little theory," Ophis replied with mocking amusement. "You believe love can stabilize the universe. Let us show you what love truly costs." The attack came from everywhere at once, not physical force, but something far more insidious. Dark energy flooded the conference chamber, seeking out the emotional bonds between all the assembled beings and twisting them into weapons of mutual destruction. Suddenly, every partnership, every friendship, every hint of affection between the supernatural representatives became a source of agonizing pain. Mated dragons turned on each other with feral rage. Angel-human partnerships dissolved into betrayal and hatred. Even the careful political alliances between faction leaders began to crumble as artificial discord poisoned their connections. "You see," Ophis called out over the chaos as the conference chamber descended into violence. "Love is not strength, it is the ultimate vulnerability. Every bond you forge becomes a chain your enemies can use to drag you down." Through the maelstrom of corrupted emotions, Issei felt his own connection to Ophis wavering. The dark energy was trying to twist their love into something possessive and destructive, to turn their devotion into a weapon that would tear them apart from within. "Fight it!" Ophis gasped, her infinite power struggling against forces that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of existence. "Do not let them corrupt what we have built." But the corruption was insidious, working on levels deeper than conscious thought. Issei found himself questioning everything. Was Ophis really devoted to him, or was she simply using him for her own cosmic purposes? Was his love genuine, or just the result of power enhancement and manipulation? Boost. The familiar surge of draconic power helped clear his thoughts, but it wasn't enough to fully dispel the doubt and suspicion being artificially generated. Around them, other supernatural beings were succumbing to the corruption, their bonds twisted into sources of mutual destruction. "This is what awaits your network of love," Rizvim taunted as he watched the chaos unfold. "Every connection you create will become a weapon we can turn against you. Every heart you touch will become a point of vulnerability." "No," Issei said firmly, his voice cutting through the din of corrupted emotions. "You're wrong about something fundamental." He reached out to Ophis, taking her hand despite the dark energy trying to convince him she was his enemy. The moment their skin made contact, their bond flared to life, not the corrupted shadow the attackers were trying to create, but the genuine connection they had built through trust, growth, and mutual devotion. Boost, the second enhancement brought clarity that cut through the artificial discord like a blade. Issei could see the attack for what it truly was, not an assault on love itself, but on the fear and doubt that love carried with it. The corruption could only take hold where uncertainty already existed. "You can corrupt bonds built on need, on fear, on selfish desire," he said, power building around him as understanding dawned. "But you can't corrupt connections built on genuine understanding and acceptance." Through their bond, he felt Ophis's recognition of the same truth. Their love wasn't vulnerable to this kind of attack because it had been forged through honesty, tested by adversity, and strengthened by the willingness to grow together rather than merely possessing each other. Boost, the third enhancement, synchronized their power in ways that made the dimensional chamber ring like a struck bell. But more than that, it created a resonance pattern that began to counteract the corruption affecting the other conference attendees. "Impossible," Ophis snarled as his influence began to weaken. "No finite being should be able to resist absolute discord." "I'm not just finite anymore," Issei replied, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. "And she's not just infinite. We're something new, something that transcends the categories you're trying to exploit." Boost. The fourth enhancement pushed their combined resonance beyond anything they had achieved before. The pure harmonic pattern of their bond began to spread throughout the chamber, offering other supernatural beings an anchor point of genuine connection they could use to resist the artificial corruption. One by one, the assembled representatives began to recover from the discord attack. The mated dragons remembered why they had chosen each other. The angel-human partnerships recalled their shared purposes. Even the political alliances reformed on stronger foundations as the beings involved rediscovered their common goals. "You see," Ophis said, her voice carrying newfound confidence as she watched their guests recover. "Love is not vulnerability when it is freely given and honestly received. It becomes vulnerability only when it is based on deception, manipulation, or selfish need. The bonds that truly matter cannot be corrupted," Issei added, "because they are built on truth rather than illusion." Abyss's expression darkened as his primary weapon proved ineffective against the network of genuine connections forming throughout the chamber. "Then we will simply destroy you all directly." The chaos entity raised his hands, preparing to unleash forces that predated the formation of reality itself. But before he could complete the attack, something unexpected happened. The other conference attendees moved as one to place themselves between the ancient threat and Issei and Ophis. Dragons, devils, angels, and beings whose names existed only in legend formed a protective circle around the couple whose love had helped them resist corruption. "You cannot reach them without going through all of us," declared Surzets, his devil power flaring with protective intent. "And we have just been reminded why bonds of genuine affection are worth defending," added Michael, divine energy creating barriers of crystallized light. "Most fascinating," observed Yulong, an ancient dragon whose scales shifted through colors that had no names. "It appears that genuine love is indeed contagious in the most positive sense. Partner, do you see what's happening? Your demonstration just created the network you were theorizing about. These beings are forming spontaneous bonds based on shared values rather than mere political convenience." Issei looked around the chamber, seeing the truth in DxD's observation. The attack had backfired spectacularly. Instead of proving love was weakness, it had demonstrated that genuine connection was the ultimate strength. The supernatural beings weren't just defending Issei and Ophis. They were defending the principle their relationship represented. "This is not over," Rizvim snarled as he and his allies found themselves outnumbered by beings whose bonds had been strengthened rather than weakened by the assault. "We will find other ways to exploit your precious connections. You are welcome to try," Ophis replied with serene confidence. "But each attempt will only prove that love built on truth and acceptance cannot be turned into a weapon against itself." As the attackers retreated through dimensional rifts, the conference chamber settled into a new atmosphere of cautious optimism. What had begun as a theoretical presentation had become a practical demonstration of the principles Issei and Ophis were advocating. "Well," Azazel said with characteristic understatement, "I think we can consider your hypothesis successfully tested under combat conditions." "The network formation was organic rather than imposed," observed a representative from the Norse pantheon. "The bonds created were based on shared experience and mutual respect rather than artificial connection protocols." "Which suggests that the universal love network you propose might indeed be viable," added an entity whose form was composed entirely of mathematical equations. "If genuine connections can form spontaneously under stress, they can certainly be cultivated under more favorable conditions." As the conference continued with renewed enthusiasm, Issei found his attention drawn to Ophis's expression. Through their bond, he could feel her satisfaction at seeing their theoretical framework validated, but also her growing awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. "This was just the beginning," she said quietly as they watched representatives from different factions begin forming cooperative agreements based on the connections they had discovered during the crisis. "Beginning of what? Our real work. Creating and maintaining a network of genuine bonds across the supernatural world will require constant effort, careful guidance, and the willingness to defend what we build against those who would corrupt or destroy it." Partner, she's describing a lifetime commitment to reshaping the fundamental nature of supernatural relationships. "Are you prepared for that kind of responsibility?" Issei looked at Ophis, seeing in her ancient eyes not just love but partnership in its truest form. They had found each other across impossible differences, learned to love beyond the boundaries of their respective natures, and now they were being called to help others achieve the same transcendence. "I'm prepared to spend eternity working alongside the woman I love to make the universe a place where genuine connection is possible," he said, taking her hand as their bond pulsed with shared determination. "Then let us begin," Ophis replied, and in her voice he heard the promise of adventures yet to come. As the Universal Love Symposium continued around them, mapping out the practical steps for creating their network of balanced partnerships, Issei realized that they had achieved something remarkable. They had proven that love could indeed be a cosmic force for positive change. But more than that, they had proven that two beings who should never have found each other could become partners in transforming the very nature of existence itself. The real work was just beginning, but they would face it together, infinite and finite, divine and human, united in love and purpose across every boundary that reality could place between them. The dimensional cascade began at exactly 3:17 a.m. Tokyo time. Issei jolted awake in their shared apartment above the warehouse district, his enhanced senses screaming warnings about reality distortions spreading across multiple layers of existence. Through the window, he could see the night sky rippling like disturbed water, stars winking out and reappearing in impossible configurations. "Ophis," he said urgently, turning to wake his partner, only to find her already sitting up in bed, her dark eyes wide with alarm. "The network is under attack," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Not individual bonds, but the fundamental structure we've been building. Someone is trying to sever all supernatural connections simultaneously." "Partner, this feels different from previous attacks," DxD warned, his voice carrying notes of genuine fear. "This isn't just targeting emotional bonds, it's targeting the concept of connection itself." Before Issei could respond, their apartment filled with emergency communications from across the supernatural world. Magical circles blazed to life, dimensional portals opened, and urgent voices called out from multiple realities at once. "The mated dragon pairs in the Germanic territories are losing their bonds," Azazel's voice crackled through a communication crystal. "Angel-human partnerships throughout the Middle East are reporting sudden disconnection syndrome." Michael's report came through a shimmering light portal. "Devil families are experiencing spontaneous contract dissolution across all major bloodlines." Surzech's image flickered through a dimensional viewing screen. "It's not just romantic bonds," Ophis realized, her face pale as she processed the scope of the attack. "They're targeting every form of supernatural connection, family bonds, friendship ties, even the links between sacred gear users and their divine weapons." The implications hit Issei like a physical blow. If this attack succeeded, it wouldn't just destroy their network of balanced partnerships. It would unravel the very fabric of supernatural society, leaving every being isolated and vulnerable to forces that thrived on division and discord. "How is this even possible?" he asked, struggling to his feet as another reality wave swept through their apartment. "By attacking the fundamental forces that allow connection to exist," came a familiar voice from the shadows. Ophis materialized in their bedroom with casual arrogance, his form more solid and threatening than it had been during the conference attack. "You again," Issei growled, the boosted gear already forming on his left arm. "Did you think your little demonstration would go unanswered?" Ophis asked with mocking amusement. "You proved that genuine love cannot be corrupted from within, so we decided to attack it from without by removing the cosmic framework that allows connection to exist at all." "That's impossible," Ophis said firmly, though Issei could sense her uncertainty through their bond. "The fundamental forces of attraction and bonding are woven into the very structure of reality." "We're woven," Ophis corrected. "But reality is more flexible than most beings realize, especially when one has access to the original chaos that preceded ordered existence." He gestured toward the window, and suddenly Issei could see the true scope of what was happening. Across multiple dimensions, the bonds between all connected beings were dissolving, not through corruption or manipulation, but through the simple removal of the cosmic forces that made connection possible. "You're unmaking love itself," Issei breathed, horror filling his voice. "We are unmaking the weakness that love represents," Ophis replied. "When we are finished, every being will exist in perfect isolation, free from the vulnerabilities that emotional attachment creates." Boost, power surged through Issei, but something was wrong. The enhancement felt hollow, incomplete, as if his connection to DxD was being strained by the same forces attacking all other bonds. "Partner, I can feel myself being pulled away from you," DxD said, his voice growing faint. "Whatever they're doing, it's affecting even the bond between sacred gear and host." "Fight it," Issei commanded, but he could already feel the dragon's presence beginning to fade from his consciousness. Through their own bond, he felt Ophis struggling against similar forces. Her infinite power was being constrained, not by external barriers but by the gradual dissolution of her connection to everything, including him. "This ends now," she declared, rising from the bed with power cascading around her in desperate waves. But when she tried to access her full infinite nature, she staggered as if hitting an invisible wall. "Your power is linked to your sense of self," Ophis explained with clinical detachment. "And your sense of self has become intertwined with your connection to him. As that bond dissolves, so does your access to infinity." "No," Issei said firmly, reaching out to take Ophis's hand. "Our bond isn't just connection, it's evolution. We've become something new together, something that transcends the original framework." Boost. The second enhancement felt stronger as he drew not just on DxD's fading power, but on the fundamental change that loving Ophis had wrought in his very nature. He was no longer simply human enhanced by dragon power. He had become something that existed in the space between finite and infinite. "Interesting," Ophis mused as Issei's power continued to function despite the reality-wide disconnection effect. "You've changed more than anticipated." "We both have," Ophis realized, her own power beginning to stabilize as she recognized the truth. "Our bond didn't just connect us, it transformed us into something that exists beyond the normal rules of connection and separation." Boost. The third enhancement proved their theory. Instead of drawing power from external sources that could be severed, Issei was drawing on the fundamental alteration that their relationship had created in both their natures. They had become living embodiments of the principle that love could bridge any gap. "Then we'll have to destroy you directly," Ophis snarled, raising his hands to channel forces that predated reality itself. But before he could complete the attack, something unprecedented happened. All across the supernatural world, beings who had been connected to their network began to remember what connection felt like, not through external bonds that could be severed, but through the internal transformation that genuine love created. The network wasn't just about creating bonds, Ophis said with dawning understanding. It was about helping beings evolve beyond the need for external connection frameworks. "Everyone who experienced genuine connection through our network carries a piece of that transformation within themselves," Issei continued, his awareness expanding to encompass the global situation. "They can't be disconnected because they've internalized what connection means." Boost. The fourth enhancement allowed him to perceive the truth on a cosmic scale. Across multiple dimensions, supernatural beings were remembering how to love, connect, and bond through internal transformation rather than external frameworks. The attack on connection itself was failing because genuine love had taught them to become connection. Mated dragons were rekindling their bonds through shared evolution rather than simple attraction. Angel-human partnerships were reforming based on mutual transformation. Devil families were rediscovering their ties through the internal changes that caring for each other had created. "Impossible," Ophis raged as his ultimate weapon proved ineffective. "You cannot make connection independent of the cosmic forces that create it." "We didn't make it independent," Ophis replied, her full infinite power returning as she embraced the transformation that loving Issei had created within her. "We made it self-sustaining. Love that changes the lovers becomes part of their fundamental nature." Boost. The fifth enhancement pushed Issei beyond anything he had achieved before. His consciousness expanded to encompass not just his bond with Ophis, but the network of evolved connections spreading across the supernatural world. He could feel every being who had learned to love beyond mere attraction, to connect through mutual growth rather than simple need. "This is what we were always moving toward," he realized, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated across dimensions. Not just a network of bonds, but the evolution of love itself into something that exists within rather than between beings. The power that erupted from their combined realization wasn't just infinite energy enhanced by finite will. It was the manifestation of love as a fundamental force of existence, not dependent on external frameworks, but creating its own reality through the transformation it brought to those who embraced it. Ophis screamed as his assault on connection itself was not just defeated, but reversed. The chaos entity found himself confronted by the opposite of what he represented, not the absence of connection, but connection so profound that it became a form of existence unto itself. "You have not won," he snarled as his form began to dissolve under the pressure of their evolved love. "Others will come, others will find ways to exploit what you have built." "Let them come," Issei replied with calm confidence. "Every challenge will only prove that love built on mutual transformation cannot be destroyed by external force." As Abyss and his reality-unraveling attack faded from existence, the dimensional cascade began to reverse itself. But the supernatural world that emerged from the crisis was fundamentally different from what had existed before. Beings who had experienced the dissolution of external connection frameworks discovered they no longer needed them. Their bonds had become part of their essential nature, self-sustaining and self-reinforcing through the continuous evolution that genuine love created. "We did it," Ophis said softly as they stood together in their apartment, watching reality stabilize around them. "We didn't just preserve the network, we helped it evolve beyond the need for preservation." "The ultimate test," Issei agreed, pulling her close as their bond pulsed with satisfaction and anticipation of challenges yet to come. "And we passed it by becoming something that transcends testing." "Partner, I'm still here," DxD's voice returned, stronger than before. "But I'm not just connected to you anymore, I'm part of the evolution you've undergone." "We all are?" As reports flooded in from across the supernatural world confirming the success of their evolved network, Issei realized they had achieved something that went beyond their wildest dreams. They hadn't just proven that love could be a cosmic force, they had helped love evolve into a form of existence that created its own reality. The ultimate test had been passed, but more than that, it had revealed that their journey together was just beginning. They were no longer just partners who had found each other across impossible differences. They were pioneers of a new form of existence based on love as transformation rather than mere connection. Whatever came next, they would face it as beings who had learned to make love itself a force of cosmic evolution. And that, Issei thought as he kissed Ophis with the passion of someone who had literally remade reality for love, was the greatest adventure of all. 6 months later, the dimensional garden Ophis had created behind their new home existed in a space that was simultaneously part of Earth and separate from it. Cherry blossoms from a dozen different realities bloomed in perpetual spring, their petals falling upward to become stars in a sky that showed the aurora borealis regardless of season or location. It was beautiful, impossible, and perfectly suited to a couple whose love had literally reshaped the laws of existence. Issei sat on a bench beneath a tree that grew mathematical equations instead of leaves, reading reports from the Universal Love Network's first quarterly assessment. The results were beyond anything they had dared hope for when this journey began. Supernatural divorce rates down 93% across all major factions, he read aloud to Ophis, who was tending to flowers that sang in harmonies only she could hear. Bond stability indexes at all-time highs. And listen to this. The rate of new partnership formation has increased by over 400% as beings discover that genuine connection enhances rather than limits their individual growth. "Satisfactory progress," Ophis replied, though the warmth in her voice suggested she was more pleased than her understated words indicated. "Though the most significant changes cannot be quantified through statistical analysis." She gestured toward a section of their garden where representatives from dozens of supernatural species were gathered for their weekly connection cultivation workshop. Dragons taught angels how to form deeper bonds with their human partners. Devils shared techniques for maintaining family connections across political pressures. Even beings from pantheons that had been isolated for millennia were learning to open themselves to meaningful relationships with others. "They're not just forming better bonds," Issei observed, watching a particularly shy Nekomata devil receive encouragement from an ancient Norse Valkyrie. "They're becoming better versions of themselves through those bonds. The network has exceeded all projections, partner," DxD commented from within Issei's enhanced consciousness. The dragon's presence had grown stronger and more integrated since the reality cascade, becoming less of a separate entity and more of a harmonious aspect of Issei's evolved nature. What began as a method for stabilizing dimensional fluctuations has become a renaissance of supernatural relationships. "More than that," Ophis said, moving to sit beside Issei on the bench. "Even after all this time, the simple pleasure of physical closeness sent warmth through their bond. It has become proof that evolution guided by love produces outcomes superior to growth driven by conflict or necessity. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their guests learn from each other with the enthusiasm of beings discovering possibilities they had never imagined. The sight filled Issei with a contentment that went beyond mere satisfaction. This was the deep peace that came from knowing your life had meaning beyond yourself. "Any word from the Cosmic Oversight Committee about our petition?" he asked, referring to their formal request to establish the Universal Love Network as a permanent institution with official recognition from all major supernatural governing bodies. "Michael sent confirmation this morning," Ophis replied with a smile that transformed her otherworldly beauty into something radiant with joy. "Unanimous approval from all 3 major factions, plus endorsements from 17 different pantheons and the Dragon Council. Even Great Red, especially Great Red." His exact words were that our success has convinced him that regulated emotional evolution poses less risk to universal stability than continued suppression of supernatural bonding instincts. High praise from the true dragon. "I suspect he's developed something approaching fondness for what you two have accomplished." "What about the opposition factions?" Issei asked, thinking of Rizvim and the various groups that had tried to destroy or corrupt their work. "Largely neutralized through isolation," Ophis replied with satisfaction. "When you remove the ability to exploit connection as weakness, beings whose power depends on division and discord find themselves with very limited influence." A soft chime drew their attention to the garden's central fountain, where a dimensional communication portal was forming. Surzech Lucifer's image appeared in the crystalline water, his expression carrying news of obvious importance. "Ophis, Issei-kun," he said with formal politeness that couldn't quite hide his underlying amusement. "I hope you're prepared for visitors. The Supernatural Council has voted to award you both the Order of Cosmic Harmony, the highest recognition for beings whose actions have positively affected universal stability." "A ceremony?" Ophis asked, her tone suggesting she was less than enthusiastic about formal recognition. "A celebration," Surzech corrected. "Representatives from across the known multiverse want to honor what you've accomplished. The ceremony is scheduled for next week, assuming you're willing to accept the recognition." Issei looked at Ophis, seeing his own mixed feelings reflected in her ancient eyes. They had never sought recognition or awards for their work. Their reward was the love they shared and the positive changes they had helped create. But perhaps accepting the honor would provide opportunities to inspire others to similar achievements. "We'll attend," Ophis decided. "Though we request the ceremony be held here in our garden, this space represents what we've built together better than any formal venue." "Agreed. I'll coordinate with the other faction leaders." Surzech paused, his expression becoming more personal. "For what it's worth, what you two have accomplished. It's given hope to beings who thought genuine connection was impossible. That's worth more than any formal recognition." As the communication portal closed, Issei found himself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It seemed impossible that less than a year ago, he had been a lonely high school student whose greatest ambition was finding a girlfriend who wouldn't reject him immediately. "Regrets?" Ophis asked, apparently sensing the direction of his thoughts through their bond. "None," he replied honestly. "Though sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Raynare had succeeded if you hadn't chosen to save me that night." "Then the universe would be a less connected place," Ophis said simply. "And I would still be isolated in my infinite solitude, unaware that existence could hold such richness when shared with another." "Partner, look around you. This garden, this network, this new form of love you've helped create, none of it would exist without that moment when you chose to live rather than simply survive. And none of it would matter without her choosing to see potential in a dying human boy," Issei added, taking Ophis's hand as their bond pulsed with shared gratitude for the impossible chain of events that had brought them together. "The past brought us to each other," Ophis observed, "but the future holds possibilities we have not yet begun to explore, such as expansion beyond this dimension. There are other realities, other forms of existence where beings struggle with the same isolation and disconnection we once faced. Our network could help them as well." The idea was both thrilling and daunting. They had already transformed supernatural relationships across their own multiverse. The thought of extending that work to entirely different forms of existence opened possibilities that challenged even Issei's enhanced imagination. Multidimensional romance counseling? He asked with a grin that made Ophis laugh, a sound that still sent warmth through his chest after all this time. Multidimensional evolution guidance, she corrected. Teaching beings across all forms of existence that love is not limitation but liberation, not weakness but the greatest strength possible. From a perverted human teenager to a cosmic force for romantic enlightenment across all of existence. Partner, I think that might be the most remarkable character development in the history of consciousness itself. Only if we can manage it without losing what made us fall in love in the first place, Issei said, voicing the concern that sometimes kept him awake at night. I don't want to become so focused on helping others that we forget to keep growing together. Impossible, Ophis replied with the certainty that only infinite wisdom could provide. Our work succeeds because it flows from what we share. The stronger our bond becomes, the more effectively we can help others achieve similar connection. She was right, he realized. Their relationship wasn't separate from their cosmic mission, it was the foundation that made everything else possible. Every day they chose to love each other more deeply, they became better equipped to guide others toward the same transcendence. In that case, Issei said, standing and offering his hand to help her up, I think our future looks pretty amazing. Infinite possibilities, Ophis agreed, accepting his assistance despite having no need for it. Such small gestures of care and connection had become precious to both of them, reminders that love expressed itself as much through tiny moments as through cosmic transformation. As they walked hand in hand through their impossible garden, surrounded by beings from across the supernatural world who were learning to love more deeply because of their example, Issei felt a completeness that went beyond mere happiness. This was the deep satisfaction of a life lived with purpose, shared with someone who made every moment more meaningful. Any idea what our next major project should be? He asked as they paused beside a fountain that showed reflections of possible futures instead of current reality. I was thinking, Ophis said with the careful tone of someone introducing a significant idea, that it might be time to consider the long-term sustainability of our work. Meaning that even infinite beings benefit from. Continuity planning. Her cheeks carried the faintest hint of color as she spoke. If our mission is to span multiple dimensions and forms of existence, it might be wise to ensure it can continue beyond our direct involvement. It took Issei a moment to understand what she was suggesting, and when comprehension hit, his heart began racing with a mixture of excitement and terror. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I am suggesting that perhaps the time has come to explore whether the evolution our bond represents could be passed on to a new generation. Ophis's voice carried shy hope mixed with infinite love. A child who embodies the union of finite and infinite, human and divine. Someone who could carry our work forward while we explore new frontiers of connection and love. Partner, the infinite dragon god just asked you if you want to start a family. I believe the appropriate response involves either spontaneous combustion from joy or a marriage proposal. Possibly both. Ophis, Issei said, his voice thick with emotion as he dropped to one knee beside the fountain of possible futures. I can't offer you a normal life or a simple relationship or any of the traditional things people promise when they propose marriage. But I can offer you everything I am, everything I'm becoming, and everything we could become together. Will you? Yes, she interrupted, pulling him to his feet so she could kiss him with the passion of someone who had waited eons to find their perfect match. Yes to marriage, yes to children, yes to whatever impossible adventures our love creates. Yes to infinity shared with the one person who makes it meaningful. As they kissed in their dimensional garden, surrounded by the impossible beauty they had created together, reality itself seemed to celebrate their decision. The mathematical tree sang equations of joy, the upward-falling cherry blossoms formed heart shapes in the aurora sky, and the fountain of possible futures showed glimpses of a love story that would span not just their own lives, but generations of beings they would help learn to love. So, Issei said when they finally broke apart, both of them glowing with power that reflected their emotional state, I guess our next project is planning a wedding that can accommodate guests from multiple dimensions and several different forms of existence. The ceremony will be magnificent. Ophis agreed, her infinite wisdom already beginning to plan an event worthy of their unique circumstances. But the marriage will be eternal. Partner, congratulations on achieving the impossible yet again. You've convinced the infinite dragon god to become a wife and mother. I don't think reality was prepared for that level of unprecedented development. As they stood together in their garden, planning a future that would reshape the very concept of family across multiple forms of existence, Issei realized that their story was far from over. They had evolved from a chance encounter between a dying human and a curious dragon god into something that transcended every category of relationship that had existed before them. But more than that, they had proven that love itself could evolve, could grow beyond its traditional limitations to become a force that literally created new forms of existence and possibility. The infinite future stretched before them, filled with challenges they couldn't imagine and adventures that would test the very foundations of reality. But they would face it all together, finite and infinite, human and divine, two souls who had chosen to become one while remaining themselves. And in that choice, in that impossible balance between unity and individuality, they had found not just love but the secret to helping love itself evolve across all of creation. The future was infinite, and it belonged to them. And there it is, Issei went from dying pervert to cosmic force of love alongside the infinite dragon god. From zero to literally reshaping relationships across multiple dimensions. What was your favorite moment? The great red confrontation or Ophis learning to be vulnerable? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more epic what-ifs and let me know what crossover you want next. Thanks for watching, peace out.